Hello. Today I'm talking with Kadidra Hurst. We're talking about the effect of education on her career, how being a perfectionist shaped her life, and no matter how bad the situation is she's in, there's always someone who has it worse.
I'm Hanoulle from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it.
Hello everyone, and with me I have Kadidra. That's how I should pronounce it, huh?
Yes,
Correct?
yes.
And I want to show immediately where we are, and actually it starts already with you. Typically I start with myself, but you're in Washington, D.C., and let's ask Google to show me a little bit where I am so you can see that we're moved to the complete other side of well, actually Europe and then Belgium. And on my side, it's now, we are recording this on a Sunday at 17, 20, 25, 26, something like that. What's the time on your side, Kadidra?
11:26.
11:26. So you see, we have not just a long distance, but also a lot of time zones difference away. And
Yes.
probably one of the reasons why we're doing that on a Sunday, because that usually is the best day to have such time zone differences,
Yes.
to have it more or less feasible for both of us. But we already jumped a little bit into that. Kadidra, for the people that don't know you, tell us a little bit, who are you?
I'm Kadidra Hurst. I live and I work in the Washington, D.C. area. Right now,
Mhm.
my job is fully remote, and I work for the American Psychological Association as a solutions manager, agile delivery lead. So that's my big title. But what I do from day to day is I'm a scrum master. I work with two teams, and I also work with my product owner and capability manager of the two teams to help them with maintaining their roadmaps, coordinating with their stakeholders, um, do all the scrum master work of leading the ceremonies and um, removing impediments and things like that. And then in my spare time, when I'm not working, I do a lot of volunteer work. So I'm a member of Agile in Color, which is an organization initiative of the Agile Alliance, and we help to um, provide coaching and mentoring opportunities and um, try to advance people of color in the Agile space. And also in February of this year, I launched an online community called Her Incisive Thoughts. And that was designed for a community for particularly for Black women, but to share ideas about leadership, business agility, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the agile space. So that is a little bit
Oh,
about me.
and that sounds already a lot that you're doing. So that
Yes.
it kind, yeah, kind of gives me the feeling like I know why you were invited. So that that feels like okay, I can get that. And I want to jump, and we probably later on talk a little more about remote as well. But I want to go a little bit more into detail when you say you work fully remote on a full day-to-day job. The other initiatives, are they also remote, or is that more in person, or how should I see that?
They are all remote. So with Agile and
Mm.
Color, the core team members are all spread out across the country. But
Mm.
we do get like we got together for the first time last year at Agile 2022 conference, and we all met in person. And this year, some of us are planning to go back for 2023 conference. So it's remote, and then Her Incisive Thoughts, it's remote. It was designed to be remote.
Wow. Okay. So there's a lot of remote work that you're doing. So I'm really looking forward to some of the answers later on.
Okay.
But let's jump into that first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, one thing I think I would say that um, I grew up in, I would say, a non traditional family. So my mom passed away when I was 13 years old, and then my
Wow.
sisters and I moved in with my grandparents, and then my grandmother got sick and passed away. And so my aunt, who was my mom's sister, um, she took us in. She bought a house in New York, a brownstone, and she took in me and my two sisters, my uncle's three kids, and she had her own three kids.
Wow,
So
that's
we all
like
lived together in one big
that's what, eight
house,
children in one age. Wow, that's a lot.
plus my grandparents, plus my uncle and my aunt. So it was very non traditional, and it really shaped who I am because it really got me focused at an early age to try to focus on my education to, to be successful. And so I really was able to trying to focus myself to keep learning, be a lifelong learner, continue to grow myself so that I could be successful.
And was that something that was, yeah, inspired by your aunt, or was that something like, I need to get out of this environment? Could you say some more if you want to?
I would say it's a little bit of both. Like my aunt, she never went to college,
Mm.
and but she was very successful working at a publishing firm in New York City, and she worked there for, I guess, over 25 years, maybe even 30 years, until she retired. So from her generation, she was a baby boomer. She got married, started working. For my generation, it was more so we want to be able to do well and, yeah, get out of
Mm.
there. But not to say it was a bad environment, but it was something where we used our education to kind of expand our minds and be able to reach heights that our parents never reached.
Mm. Because I can imagine losing your mother at age of 13, like that's yeah, I have a daughter who's slightly a little bit older, 15 years old. I can imagine that's really an age where, yeah, at the same time you hate your parents and at the same time you need them very much. I mean, like there's a
Exactly.
lot of that, so that's normal, I think, at that age. But of course, if you don't have your parents, that you can also be mad at someone who's not there. And of course, so
Yes.
there's also a need, I would say, in a way, in that age, you need to kind of rebel to some people, but that's hard if that person is not there.
Right.
Because then yeah, well, I know a friend who had a similar experience, or a colleague actually had a similar experience, and actually for her it was like, yeah, I would feel bad rebelling against the person, and hating a person that's no longer there, because then I feel like I can't hate her because it's not her fault. And I don't know if that's something that you ever experienced, or is that
Um, I wouldn't say that. I would say there wasn't really any time. Well, first of all, I am a goody two shoes, so I'm
mm,
not the rebellious child. So I wouldn't say I was angry, but also, yes, you have a mother figure, but that's not the same as having your mother. And this
mm,
mother figure that you have has eight other children that they are worrying about. So for me, I kind of retreated into myself. So I wasn't rebellious. Um, I just focused on my studies. I had my older sister to talk to, my older cousins to talk to.
what
And
age were you compared to the other children? What age were you?
um, I'm in the middle. So my aunt's children, three children, are all older than me. So her youngest child is 5 years older than me.
Hmm.
Then 3 years older than me, I have an older sister. And then younger than me, I have a younger sister who's 2.5 years younger, and I have younger cousins that are maybe 5 and 7 years younger. So I've always been the middle child among my mother's children and then among this bigger family. And everything that they say about the middle child, I can identify with it.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're the middle child in the real family, in the main from your family of origin, I would say. But even
Mhm.
in the bigger family, you're again the middle child. So you have that in in all kind of directions, I would
Yes.
say. And then yeah, in that sense, I'm not surprised that you were not rebellious because that's something I've seen in other middle childs as well.
Yep. My younger
They're
sister is the rebellious one. Me,
yeah.
not so much.
But at the same time, yeah, you focus on really doing well. You focus on getting out, and so that's um. Could you say some more on how do you then joined the workforce? How what was that first
Oh,
part of
yeah.
getting out?
So it started. So I was fortunate enough to go to a specialized high school in New York City, Brooklyn Tech High School. And that is a specialized high school where students had to take a test to get into it. And it was a
Mm,
STEM school focused on science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
wow, already
Um,
at a lot of times ago because in Belgium STEM, we know like 5, maybe 10 years, but not more. So you were already in high school like
yep,
a long time ago there.
yep. So my mom passed away. I was in the eighth grade, and at my junior high school, we had the opportunity to either graduate in the eighth grade or graduate in the ninth grade. So I opted to stay at my school to the ninth grade. And so when I tested into Brooklyn Tech, I was able to go there for my 10th grade year and go there
Mm,
for high school. So that started my life in technology, right? I know you have a future coming up. What would I be doing if I wasn't
mm,
working
yeah,
here?
exactly.
So going to Brooklyn Tech kind of took me into that IT space because out of all the majors, I selected computer science.
Mm,
And then after leaving Brooklyn Tech, I went to Syracuse University and I studied information management and technology because very early on, back then at Brooklyn Tech, I loved the technology, but I didn't love so much the science, having to know physics and chemistry. And I'm a math genius, but science is not my thing. So I found out about this major called information technology, which was more business. It was a technical degree, but it was business based. And
mm,
so that I knew was perfect for what I wanted to do. And that's what took me to Syracuse University. I graduated in 1999, right before the big tech boom. So the
mm.
class of 99, we all had jobs after graduating. The class of 2000 did not because after,
Mm.
the boom happened. So after I got a job actually before I even graduated, I was
Wow.
accepted into the information management leadership program at General Electric, and I got assigned to the New York office, NBC, which was a subsidiary of GE at the time, and that was the start of my entry into the workforce.
Mm. So
And
that's already answered. And you talked about that year after that that didn't have quick jobs because of everything that happened. Did that bust also impacted your career? Because I can imagine you're the first or the last to join. Is that had that an impact on your work or not?
on me personally, it has not. I
Mm.
am very fortunate to have been able to work in IT for my entire career in different capacities, and I have had all types of jobs. Right, I've done um, database work, programming, project management, help desk, technical writing, technical training, online learning. Like I've done a wide range of jobs within IT. And
Wow.
I really love it. Like
I
it's
thought I
really
had done multiple, a lot of jobs in IT, and then I hear your list and like, okay, I've done some of what you talked about. Like I also done help desk and some other things, but like your list is way longer than my list. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed. But yeah, that brings me kind of to that question you already talked about. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, what could have become of you? And so there is, well, and I'm even more interested in a little bit, like you already talked about so many things you did in your career, but was there, before you went into that yeah, that school where you had that test, were there other things that were on your mind, or were there, when you're very young, other things that were you're supposed to do?
um when I was very young, and this is, I probably never seriously looked into this, but when I was very young, fifth grade, we had a career day at my school, elementary school, and someone came who was a certified public accountant, CPA.
Hmm.
And that person, I was talking to them, and they were telling me about how well it pays to be a CPA, and how you
Hmm.
could work, and then you could also do things on the side, like if you do people's taxes on the side and things like that. So I went home and I was like, okay, I want to be an accountant. Didn't All
Hmm.
that I knew is that accounting made a lot of money. Um, but
But that's interesting because at that age, yeah, not many people think about the money. And I mean, most people think about, oh, a firefighter, or
yep,
I don't know, whatever, the kind of things that we see on television or that we know something about. And here there is, okay, it's of course, it's kind of instructed, or it's helped by the school, because having that person
hmm
invited.
hmm
That person then talks mostly about the money. Not surprising that an accountant talks about money. Uh, but it's, or at least that's how my point of view. My accountant will
it's
shoot me for
true.
this, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit on how that works. But as a child, as a young child, that kind of inspires you. I can also imagine if you have, yeah, if you're living in a household with so many children, that this is not the moment. Yeah, you need almost to be a millionaire to have a lot of money with such a large family. So I can
Yes.
imagine that maybe you weren't poor, but there definitely wasn't a lot of money, I assume.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So I have given this a lot of thought, because if I hadn't gone to Brooklyn Tech,
Mm.
would I had gone into IT at all? Right? Would I have looked into computer science? The answer is no. I really had a lifelong dream of being an attorney, not practicing law. I wanted to go to law school, get a law degree, and then do some type of social justice work.
Mm.
Um, and that has all that even as early as maybe 5 years ago, I still was looking at, oh, maybe I could take the LSAT now. But I talked to a few friends of mine who are attorneys, and they said, well, Kadidra, you don't have to go to law school to do that. Like,
Well, you're
just,
doing it right now with Women in Agile, I would say, and with
yeah,
everything else you do outside your job. So that, in that
exactly.
sense, you don't need the degree to do that kind of thing and to make these kind of change. And I would even say, by doing the job and then helping others doing that, you're kind of leading the way for, and be that example.
Yes. Yep.
That's really how it feels to me.
hmm
But what I hear, and I'm really well, surprised in a positive sense, is I'm hearing you talk about accountant. I hear you talk about attorney, and that's still at that age you decide to go to that school that is STEM. What triggered you? Was that kind of forced by that family, or was that you wanting to do? How should I see that? Because it's
It was,
really completely
yeah.
different.
So it was absolutely forced by the family, and
Hmm.
you really have to be a New Yorker to understand. There's three top high schools, right? Stuyvesant High School, Bronx Science High School, and Brooklyn Tech. So when you take the exam and you get in, it's kind of expected that you go, like you have to go. And
But even
so
taking that exam, is that something that everybody has to do, or was that also triggered? How should I see
no,
that?
the exam is optional, but everybody at the junior high school took the exam. It was like sort of how everybody takes the SAT, to try to get into college, just like you want to get into the best high schools. So they offered the
You get
exam.
you offer the exam and you say, okay, let's try it. And then, well, I don't know if it was a surprise or not, but now you're passing in and it's like,
It
okay,
was a
yeah,
surprise.
Kadidra, maybe you didn't expect it. Maybe you want to become a lawyer, but you really, accepted in one of the top 3 schools in New York. So yeah, please
Yeah,
go there.
yeah.
And was that so? You said it was a surprise. You said you felt, well, it's kind of forced, and I understand a little bit. It's probably not by negative ways, but really like, hey, you're accepted in an interesting school, so let's do that. How was that for you then to join in? Because you talked about, you're a math geek. You already said you were really into math, probably why you got into that with that exam. You like some of that stuff, but not everything.
Hmm.
But I still see somehow a girl who's interested in accountancy, is interested in attorney, yeah, so in law and all that kind of things. How is that little girl? I don't know. A little is maybe a little bit exaggerated, but how is that girl then getting interested in computers? How does that work?
Well, 1 second.
Yeah, that's fine.
You have to go upstairs. Go upstairs. I have a 4-year-old who just interrupted me. Um,
That's fine.
so how did I get into computers? So when we look at, so within Brooklyn Tech, there were only a few majors to choose from, right? So we had like architecture, civil engineering, electrical engineering, biomed, chemistry. I think those are the different
Mhm.
types of majors. And for me, I thought that the computer science one was the closest to something I might remotely be interested in. So at Brooklyn Tech, your first 2 years, you kind of took core classes, if you will. So we had like machine shop. We might have had one programming class. So I did terrible in the machine shop class. Um, I, you know, I really love it now putting things together, but at that time you would start out with a piece of metal and then you have to turn that piece of metal into a hammer, right?
Wow.
So
Okay.
I was always cutting my thing too small and then I had to redo it. So it was just like, okay, this is not working out. So at the end you're proud that you have this hammer or something that resembles a hammer because mine always had poor dimensions and I was proud of it, but I'm a perfectionist and I wanted to do
Mm.
something that I was going to do well in. And so I selected computer science back
Because that
then.
was, yeah, you felt more
Yeah,
comfortable than creating hammers. Let's put it like that.
exactly. Yes, exactly.
But it's yeah, it really, I'm really glad that I asked the extra questions because it shows a lot about how that works and how selecting. And I know also that, well, I have people who are now going to college and really having to make these kind of decisions. And for them, it's like, yeah, this is the most important decision. But your example, your story shows also a little bit, yeah, you kind of run into one part, but then you take another decision and another, and gradually you move into that thing that you end up liking very much.
Yep.
And it's sometimes we kind of stumble into that, like you say, everybody takes a test. Oh, I'll take the test. Oh, I'm selected. Oh, I didn't expect that. And then and then you make that next step. So and I think that's a nice example how life happens for a lot of people. It's not one big aha bulb, like let's do this, and the rest of your life, well, no,
And
that's
another
no
thing
longer true.
apologize. Another thing I want to point out is that I went from a school where I was the smartest person in the school. I was the valedictorian, to a place where everybody is smart, right? So I wasn't the top of the top in high school, and that was an adjustment for me because it was like, okay, I'm not used to this
You were
environment.
used to being the smartest person in
Yes,
class,
yes,
in everybody around you. So that's, I can imagine that could be an emotional shock, because like you think really you're the smartest person, and kind of in your head you probably know that you're not Einstein, but at the same time, like, look, but maybe I'm the Einstein of my generation because I'm so smart. And then you
no,
go
I
to
knew
school
that.
and yeah.
Yeah, but I was saying, like, if I had gone to a non-specialized high school, I think I would have continued along the path of being in the top, which would have then impacted the types of scholarships I would have been able to get for college. So that entire trajectory also would have been different. Um, but
Yeah, because you might feel the top of your world, you might be the smartest, but the world is like a lot smaller, and
Mhm.
you're better off if you're even the dumbest of a very smart school. You probably are still, yeah,
In the
pushed a lot more than the top at another kind of school. I think
exactly.
that's a really important message to tell people, because yeah, a lot of people like to be the smartest among in the room, but actually your story kind of shows that no, of course, and like you say, you felt bad about it, that it doesn't, it's not always nice, but now looking back, it kind of shows that it helped you grow, and it
Hmm.
gave you opportunities that you would not have had otherwise.
Yeah,
That's really important to add that.
yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
I want to move to that. You're welcome. You're welcome. I think that it's really important to test that out. I want to move to that next question about a challenge, because you talked already about some of these challenges. What do you consider your biggest challenge, at least the biggest challenge that you want to share open on the internet, and why is that a good thing for you?
Um, my biggest challenge is I really thought about this question, but I couldn't really think of anything as my
Mm,
biggest challenge. Um, so I think I am my biggest challenge. And what I mean
mm,
by that is, you know, I'm always trying to I want to make an impact on this world, right? So I want to figure out what is the best way that I could do that. And while while trying to make the world a great place for others, I kind of neglect myself and my own
mm.
needs. So I would say my biggest challenge is, you know, including myself in that, you know,
A better world.
that better world and making myself better, because if I'm not good, I can't help anybody else. But it's hard for me to prioritize myself.
Hmm. I've said it before on the show, but for me, the thing that reminds me of that is in the airport, in the airplane, when they say you first have to put on your own mask before you can put on the mask of a child or
Mhm,
someone else who's in
mhm,
need. And in the airplane, it's so clear, because we know that if I don't put on my mask first, I might pass out, so I don't know how to help. But it really is a great metaphor for what you just been talking about, because of course, as a parent, we want first to take care of our children, but there is a moment that if you're too exhausted, yeah, maybe we need to sleep more, and then say, well, someone else has to take care of my child, or someone else has to do this or that. And it's so tempting as a parent to undervalue ourselves, not realizing that it's actually hurting also the person that we want to help.
Yes.
And of course, explaining that to a 4-year-old is kind of hard. Uh, I think it's even hard to explain that to a 15-year-old, but to a 4-year-old, it's even harder. But I like the way you said it also, because it's also explaining to yourself. It's really, you first need to be convinced, and you first need to think about that, and first to say, wait a minute, yes, I want to help out, but let's think about myself as well.
Hmm.
I like that the way you put it is that your biggest challenge is yourself in that sense. And there is that second part of that question. Why is that a good thing for you? What is so good about that situation for you?
Um, it's good for me because it forces me to really take the time for myself. Like I have to schedule the time and think about it, right? So you mentioned the example about the airplane and putting the mask on yourself first. And true story, I was never in a plane crash or any place where that happened, but I was on a plane with my daughter. She was a baby at the time, maybe a lap baby, 1 or under 2. And I've heard that instruction a million times. But that day, they gave the instruction, and the flight attendant went to every person that had a child with them, and they said, okay, remember, put it on yourself first and then put it on the baby. And at that moment, I was like, that's crazy. Like,
Mm.
why would I do that? Um, so in real life, my train of thought just got lost, but I was going to say that you always think that the right thing to do is to help others. And if you prioritize yourself over others, then you're being selfish. Um, you're being, you're not being a good citizen. And
Mm.
so I think it's good for me to have that challenge because it forces me to have to be very intentional about prioritizing myself.
I would, of course, I don't want to psychologize, and I don't know what happened in your life, but if I think about being raised by someone who's raising a lot of children, I can imagine that it sends the message like, I don't care about myself. That aunt didn't care about herself. She cares about helping all these children. And I can imagine that you can kind of internalize the fact that, oh, I should really do something similar. And maybe your aunt took care of herself in a different way that you as a child, you had no idea. But you kind of, yeah, get that message. I think that at least as a parent, that's always the thing that you want your children to think, that I put you first, even if you sometimes have to take yourself first to help them. You really want to stress the message. You're the most important thing for me, and I will always put yourself first. But at the same time, we're kind of internalizing a message in the child, like you should always first think about the others. Is that something that could
I
happen,
think
or?
that's I know that my aunt definitely with 100% certainty I know that she did deprioritize herself, right? And
Mm,
it's really about that struggle of having to keep the lights on, keep everybody fed, keep everybody clothed. Like we had the basic needs, and that really um, was important. But also, it's like um, no matter how bad you may be doing, there's always somebody that's doing worse. So you really shouldn't complain. So that I grew up with that mindset as well.
mm.
Like, okay, I'm thankful for these things that I have. And yeah, it's just a attitude of gratitude that I still have to this day.
And which is good, in a sense, where I don't think that saying that you should take care of yourself is undermining that message. I think it's really good to
Right.
really, and I really liked what you said, is like there is always people who have it worse, and indeed sometimes we can help out others one way or another. Even at the lowest moments of our life, there might be people who have a worse time, so it's kind of okay to think that way. But at the same time, it's finding that balance to can I also prioritize myself.
Yep.
That's it's been already very deep thoughts. So thank you for sharing that, because these are really I really like that we go that deep, because it shows a lot of where a lot of things are coming from. And in that sense, that next question, you already, when you talked in the beginning about the work that you're doing, and then about the two organizations that you're helping or even creating, I feel a lot of drive. I feel a lot of passion. And I kind of have an idea where that comes from, but could you say some more about where did you know? Do you know where that drive is coming from? Where that passion is coming from?
It comes from wanting, like I just said, wanting to have a better world, a more equitable world, a more equal world. Within the United States specifically, the politics have been really bad, and it has been increasingly divisive. And I think that we all as Americans need to come together and stop worrying about what political party people are in, and really have common sense of what is it that people need and how can we meet those needs. So the thing that drives me is just that, wanting to have that more just and equitable world.
Yeah, that's how it feels in a lot of what you said earlier on, also with women in agile and everything else you're doing. And but that's, like you said earlier on about being an attorney and doing law to help out other
Hmm.
people's.
Hmm.
Do you know what triggered that? Was there something that you, because I think the situation in America, I think it worries a lot of people. Even in Europe, we see it, and it's not just inside America. Even in Europe, we see a lot of polarization. Um, so it's a world that has been more and more polarized. I don't know how to pronounce that
Polarizing.
word. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. In different kind of ways, but you had it already as a child. So is there something that triggered that? Do you know where that original desire came from?
Well, again, you have to. Well, I don't think you have to be a New Yorker to understand, but where I grew up in New York City, in Harlem in the 1980s, it was a time of extreme poverty. This is back when I was living with my mom. Extreme poverty, extreme drugs, um, homelessness, like you name it. I'll walk outside of my building and it would be all around me. And so, being motivated to not want to end up like those people that I saw around me, and also not only not wanting to end up like that, but wanting to help them and also help the other children that I grew up with to not end up like that either. That kind of motivates me, and that's something that is still with me to this day. To
Yeah,
just have that
I,
heart of service.
I find it interesting because I can think many people, when they walk up on the streets and see homeless people and see all these kind of things, I can imagine that for a lot of people it's indeed that dream, like, oh God, let make sure I never end up like that. But for you, even as a child, you kind of immediately add to it, and not my friends and not other people, and okay, that homeless person that I'm walking by every day or every, I don't know, I want to help that person.
Oh
It's
yeah.
really wonderful that you had that at a young age, and that it still drives you. That's really really nice. It's it kind of shows a lot about who you are, and I think it shows up not just in this conversation, but in the work that you do. in the Women for Agile and everything else that it kind of shows up. This is I don't remember the exact words when you were invited, but I think that's part of what was said is that, okay, you really need to talk to Kadidra because she's the driving force in helping some of these things. So that's and it feels in that thing. And in that sense, that's kind of the perfect introduction for that next question. Like, what is your biggest achievement so far? And before we jump into that, I first want to ask you a sub question. Is it easy for you to be proud? Because this is basically your moment to brag. Is that easy for you as a person to say, yes, this is?
It is not easy for me to brag. And in fact, on an employee evaluation that I got years ago, my boss had the feedback for me that I don't like to be publicly acknowledged about stuff. So I have been trying to work on that because if I don't talk about what I'm doing, then nobody's going to know about it, right? And
if you don't talk about it, why would anyone else talk about it?
Yes. So with that said, I'm not the type of person to brag, but my biggest achievement so far is I got accepted to, and I'm going to be starting a doctoral program on May 15th at my alma mater, Syracuse University. It's a Doctor of Professional Studies degree in Information Management. And my research focus...
I couldn't resist doing that.
And my research focus is right now, the anticipated focus is going to be on the impact of coaching and mentoring on leadership development of people of color in the Agile community. So it kind of wraps around everything that I'm interested in. And it gives me that terminal degree that I've always aspired to have. And I'm very excited about my future. And then once I have that doctorate degree, how I could influence the profession and the field.
Wow, it leaves me speechless because it's when you were saying, especially when you start saying, okay, I'm it's hard for me to brag, and I'm like, okay, then now what will come? What do you dare even say? Because sometimes I have people here that really say that. I've even had the person who said afterwards, like, yeah, I could also mention that, and that was for me like, whoa, this is live grown, but yeah, I don't dare to share it. And this is why I started to asking that question about, is it easy for you to brag? Because some people really, the biggest thing they don't even dare to talk about. And this is, okay. Yeah, so this is very, very nice. And what inspired you to go to that path? Is there something that triggered you to do that? Is that the Woman in Agile work, or
Agile in Color.
Agile in Color. Sorry, I keep saying the wrong thing.
That's okay. So, yeah, absolutely. Because through my work with Agile in Color, I was able to take advantage of opportunities to speak and do talks at Agile conferences. And I noticed that a lot of the things that I wanted to talk about was around the diversity and inclusion space. I did agile and inclusion. I talked about bringing inclusion to agile teams. Within APA, I did an APA Leadership Academy, and there was a component of that on coaching and mentoring. And so I wanted to research more into that and try to put together a talk about coaching and mentoring. And then one day I was on LinkedIn and a friend of mine had gotten a degree called a Doctor of Business Administration, DBA. And I said, oh, I had never heard of that before. And so I was looking more into that degree and I was like, okay, so it's a doctorate, but it's a professional doctorate business degree. And I thought that that was something that I would be interested in, that I wanted to look more into. And it was actually my husband who found this Doctor of Professional Studies at Syracuse program. And he told me about it. And I met with the program director, and the rest is history. Like, after that meeting, by the time a month later passed, I had submitted my application and was on the way to being accepted. So it was a very fast turnaround because
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds like very fast. Usually these kind of things take a lot of months before you get accepted
the
and even do the paperwork, I would say.
exactly. So when I reached out to him, I knew it was after the deadline, and I was really intending to apply for next year, 2024.
Mm.
But it just so happened that he had space available in the current cohort that's starting now. And after talking to him, and he seemed to be excited about the research as well. And so he said that if I wanted to apply, that, I could do so, and that they would extend the time for people to get their recommendations in. But it just so happened my recommenders, like, they said yes right away, wrote the recommendation letters right away. And it was, it's just everything aligned. And then I was able to do it. Like, I didn't even have time to say no because everything was just happening so fast. And then I got in, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, it sounds, but it's also, and not just you, I think, if you need to have recommendations and people jump into their pen immediately to write it, that also means that they're excited and they say, yes, this is something you can do. If
Absolutely.
you apply after the fact or after the deadline and the people you talk to say, no, wait a minute, we'll change our deadline just for you, that means you made an impression. It's very tempting. Well, most people look for an excuse to say no. And so they had all the excuses they had. They could just have said, well, let's see how you're interested even next year. So let's come back next year. They could have just as well said that, and you would have found it normal. But now it's like
Exactly.
everybody is jumping in their way to for you. So that it's also put the bar really high. Yeah? That means that there's a lot of expectations. Um, so and how is that? Because you in the beginning you also talked a little bit about being a perfectionist. How is that for you to then see everybody jumping for you? Because most perfectionists that I know, they also have some kind of thing. Yeah, but I need to do much more because then otherwise people will see that I'm actually not as good as everybody thinks I am. It's not every perfectionist, but most of them, or not most, some of them are like that. Is there something like that for you as well, that you feel that the bar is there, or how should I see it?
I don't think so. I think that I like to have my work speak for me instead of
Mm,
me speaking for me. Um, and so really I was looking, like, I knew that I was capable, and I knew that even if those two people that I asked at first, if they had said no, there's still other people that I could have asked.
mm,
But the surprising thing for me was, my husband was a big part of that too. It was like, well, just go ahead and ask, right? And
mm.
so if someone had said no, again, I would have found somebody else, and I would have, applied for the next year or whatever, because I just really felt like
This is for
the
me.
timeline was so accelerated that I didn't even have time to think about it and talk myself out of it, if you will, because I'm really good at talking myself out of stuff too.
Mm. So if in that way, if they would not have accepted you, maybe in the next year you would have talked yourself out of that, even if it's really something that's really good for you. I don't know if
Right.
that's
Yes,
that's
yes.
true or not,
Right. I would have said, "Oh, okay, well, that's okay," and I would have found
and by
somebody else.
yeah, and by the next year you're on to other new adventures and other kind of new things.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's definitely something I recognize. I sometimes timeline is not perfect, and then then you jump into all kind of other things. That's really interesting kind of thing you're talking about. I want to move to that next question. Do you have any personal agility tip to share with us?
So yes, I do. So a personal agility tip, and I'm sure this may sound cliche, in terms of don't be afraid or be very intentional about inspecting and adapting in your life, right? So as an example, if you set a goal for yourself, right? You want to check in and see what is your progress toward that goal. You want to be able to break your goal into bite-sized chunks that are achievable steps to reach the goal. And then you want to periodically inspect that goal to say, okay, well, is this something that I really want to do? What's my progress toward the goal? How am I getting there? And my very first Scrum trainer, her name is Kim Brainard. She taught me something that I use to this day, and it is, what is the 15% solution, right? So you don't have to think about that big 100% of the goal, but what is that small thing that you can do that will take you one step closer to that goal? And ever since she taught me that, I really use it all the time in all areas of my life. What's that 15% solution to get me that step closer? And
I really like that, because it's a lot of us, we're looking like, okay, I need to have already 80 or 100% before I even talk to other people, and before I even say, no, okay, what's the minimal version in that sense? Yeah, exactly. And that will move the needle. And then once we're moving, it's a lot easier to keep on moving. But it's that very first step, and I really like that. And okay, I don't know if that's in that moment, and 2% or 15, that's not important, but it's really like 15% sounds really like smallish. It's really like below the half of it, and it's really like to get me going. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, it's really like, okay, what can you do? What's the and it kind of removes all the barriers about, oh, but that's not good enough. Yeah, that's the goal. It should not be good enough. We know it, but it's to get you going. I really like that. I think I will steal that idea as well.
Yeah, and then when you're talking about perfection, and I know this is a second tip, but there is a such thing as good enough, right? Like, it may not be perfect. In scheduling this podcast today, in coming up with all the answer, and it's like, I really was overthinking it, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. It's going to turn out the way it's going to turn out. But I didn't have to spend hours preparing, if you will. So I just said, well, we're just going to go with the flow, and I think it's been successful so far. So.
Well, I wanted to ask how you're happy with how it's going so far, because definitely I am. Let's put it like this. And you're right. There are people who are really, really, I would almost say, wrongly preparing, or preparing too much, that it feels like it's almost a rehearsed story that they're bringing, and then it doesn't feel as natural as it feels here. The goal that I'm trying to tell people all the time, this should really feel like a conversation that the two of us, Mr. Atkins says, it's the two of us sitting in the bar. It really felt like the last time we were sitting together somewhere at the conference, and that's the goal. Okay,
yes.
We're not sitting in a bar. We don't have any drinks, or at least I have a coffee, which is usually not what I drink in a bar. And we're sitting with cameras on us. It's a completely different kind of thing, but at the same time, it really should feel like that. And that's how it is. If we're going to a conference and we're sitting at the end of the evening in the bar, I'm not preparing, okay, who should I talk to and what's the person to talk to. I just sit and I say, okay, this is a person that I was in a workshop with, or that I was sitting at a table with. Let's have a chat and let's talk a little bit. And then at first you ask in a little bit like you say, okay, introduce yourself. Who are you? That I know a little bit, and then we keep going. Okay, the questions are here prepared to have a kind of schedule, but I hope that people feel like this is just the guideline and we're adding a lot of other stuff. That's the nice thing. So yes, you took the liberty to add a second tip, but I really like that one. It's both. I think it's really, it's wonderful tips. It's really helping people. I think that it's really like, don't over prepare stuff. And like my example I gave, sometimes it doesn't feel as good if it's over prepared. I talked to a professional musician even just last night, and we talked about, a concert really should be feeling right. And it doesn't matter in a concert if the guitarist is playing a bad note. If the mood is right and if we can dance and everything, that's a really important thing. I've been to a show that was completely well prepared and completely every note was correct, fine, and on timing and and it was boring. It was just not fun. And that's the kind of thing. That's what, when it feels over prepared, it's technically completely okay, but it didn't swing, it didn't invite me to dance. It just invited people to listen. Oh, he played really good guitar, fast or whatever. And it's like,
Right.
the goal of a concert for me is to have fun and not to sit and count the number of correct notes and say, oh, this is 100%, so it should be a good concert. No,
Exactly.
the goal of a concert is I dance and I have fun, or at least for me, that's what it is for me.
That's your acceptance criteria.
Exactly, that's the acceptance criteria. When you go back home, it's if you ask, if you see someone and you danced a lot, is it a good party? That's the kind of thing that you're asking for. So that's the kind of thing we're looking for. And that's how it feels so far, this conversation as well. So I want to move to, for today, probably one of the most interesting questions, because you do all that kind of remote work. So, and somehow it stopped showing. Okay, now it shows. What have you learned about remote work? Is there anything a good tip that you can tell us about?
One good tip, and it's related to what we were just talking about, in terms of not having to make everything be perfect. So in a remote world, I've learned that you just need to manage the deliverables, right? You're not really managing the people. So if you have a team, and my teams are global, I have people in India, I have people in Jordan, in New Jersey. And so there's only a few hours of the day that we're all together and working at the same time. But when it comes to those deliverables, you can work on your deliverable at whatever time works best for you. And I really, as long as we get that, how you do it, the time that you do it, I just care about the work and what that increment is and having it done on time. And I think that managers and leaders who don't get that, they are more strict about, okay, you have to be at your desk from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And whenever I ping you, you have to respond right away. You know, treating your workers like that in today's remote environment, I don't think that's going to be successful. And if people are able to manage themselves, and the leaders manage the deliverables, then I think it makes a better environment for all.
I really like that tip, and I think it's a tip that's true also in the non-remote work, but in the remote work, it's even exponentially more important. I
Yes.
mean, how could you control a person who's 100 kilometers or 1,000 kilometers away. You can't. You can try to do it, but it just won't work. And so basically, you have to trust the people. And big surprise, the more you trust the people, most people then deliver, and most people want to keep that trust and want to keep that promise that they're making. And
Exactly.
yeah, there might be some exceptions, but for me, it really feels like exceptions. On 100 people, most people, like 99% at least, will do that work. And that one other person or that 1%, you can't, even stricter control won't help with that person either. So
Yeah, and
it doesn't make it. Yeah, continue.
it's true. What I was gonna say was, but a lot of times for that one person, you know, the leadership will apply stricter rules to everybody just for that one
Yes.
person, and I really I have never been agreeing in agreement with that where everybody gets in trouble for one person's mistake. I think that we should really focus on that one person and not necessarily say to single them out, but you give them the support that they need to be able to work to their full potential. And that's an individual thing because everybody will need different things. And a good leader will recognize that and, you know, act accordingly.
I really like that you stressed that out, because indeed, when you make stricter rules for person A, then you also need strict rules for person B and strict rules for person C that are all different. And in the end, we have the stricter rules for A, B, C that it's really like, I feel like I can't move anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that doesn't help. And maybe I don't even get the support. Because you kind of also, well, you talked a lot about the rules, but in the end, you also talked about the support. And yes, the support, and also the support. I don't need the same support as you need, and someone else. So we all need different kind of supports, and we need different kind of rules. And maybe for some people, that support is okay. You need to tell me what are the rules that I need to work. That might be for some people that might feel like, oh, I will work 24 hours in a negative way, and at some point we don't set our own boundaries. So it might be a person that really needs some kind of rules like that. That's fine, but you need to tailor the rules, and you need to tailor the support. And if that support means somebody wants some extra rules, that's fine, but it
Mm-hmm.
should be tailored. I really like that you put it that way. And yes, I've seen it, and I would be really interested if people who are put something in the comments below about when did you see that in the world? Because I've seen it multiple times, that indeed you add a rule for one person that's doing something bad, and then we add the rules to kind of control it. And in my experience, most people then oblige to that rule. They all complain except one person, and that's the person for who that rule was created. So we end up hurting everyone except the person for who we created that rule. And
Yep.
yeah, I've seen it. I think kind of similar to what you said. I've kind of attacked it, or I've kind of rebelled against these kind of rules, because it usually is hurting way more people than it's helping. And when it's hurting a lot of people, it usually is hurting the company as well, and the person that is creating these rules, and he or she doesn't understand what's happening. And that I really like that. That's a wonderful tip. That, yeah, like I said earlier on, remote. Yeah, it's probably one of the most important tips about remote work, to make things happen and to make
Mm-hmm.
things working. So every feeling I had about, I didn't want to put the bar high, so I was scared that I'd say I really have a high bar for about learning about remote work. But yeah, you even succeeded beyond that, because for me that is really an important tip for having to have people think about. Okay, I want to move to that next question. What's the book that you have read that you want to talk about?
Um, the book that I read that was very impactful is called The Human Side of Agile.
So that's the one, the book
That
from
is,
Gil Broza.
yep.
Oops, let's bring you back. Yes, indeed.
And I chose that book because it is the very first book about agile that I've ever read. And I I purchased it as one of many books that I bought at the bookstore at Agile 2022, and I started reading it on the plane home from Nashville. And I really loved the book because it really opened my eyes as to what it means to have an agile mindset. It really started having me giving me a growth mindset and an agile mindset in terms of our teams are made up of people, and we have to have that. We have to know each team member as a person and respect them as a person and understand that the work is not the most important thing. It's really that the humans behind the work, and if they have everything that they need to be able to succeed, then they'll succeed and the work will show for it. So I really love it. And in the book, there was an opportunity, I think, to sign up for emails from Mr. Broza. And I even went on LinkedIn and I sent him a friend request, and I get periodic updates from him with really good tips in my email that are related to the book. So I highly recommend it.
It's it's one of these books. I think it's more than 10 years old. I don't know the exact moment when it came out, but I really liked what Gil is writing about. So it's really and I like him as a person. But of course, it's not because I like a person that I like everything that they write. That's not always the case. But in this case, it's a nice example of a book. And I can imagine if that's one of the first books that you read when you're going into the agile space, that you learn a lot about about how that works and how that focus and like you say, that focus for agile for humans is so important. Um, well, your tip that you gave about remote work is linked to that for me as well.
Yep.
Is like, okay, looking at what's that, where, what do people want, and where is that? So that's the kind of thing that that is really interesting. So thank you for sharing that. And when we just were discussing before we started, you also said that you might want to talk about another book that you saw.
Oh yeah, there's a book called Making Work Visible.
And that's somewhere behind me. Let's.
Yeah. Yep,
So
that's it.
it's not a fake background for the people who are wondering. So that's really the book. It's the book from Dominika Degrandis. She was on the show earlier on, invited, but also really liked that book as well. So why do you like that book so much?
Because it helped me to understand the how work flows, and when um, when work is invisible, meaning when there's things going on that people have no idea about, that's where we have long cycle times. We have unclear priorities. We can't measure the progress of it. So we really have to bring those things to the surface so that everyone's aware of what's going on. And it's really about, we're not building physical products. It's all knowledge work, and it's hard to quantify knowledge work in that way. And so it really opened my eyes again to how I can do that in my own job.
Yeah, the fact that I like that you bring back the knowledge work part, because I've also worked in helping create software for a factory, so real factory. And then one of the things that we've learned over the years, or probably now more than 20 years ago, is that okay, we should minimize the work that is stocked in the factory, because that's very expensive. But it's very easy when you walk around such a factory to see, okay, this is a part, this is all work that's not been finished. So you very clearly see all the unfinished work. And then in the software world, you don't see that. Even if we talk about creating a course for Agile or anything else, it's in our minds, and maybe you have a deck or something like that, but it's very tempting to not make it visible and to not see all the work that we spend to it, and to not have it as a finished product, or not even try to publish or do something with it. So that's, yeah, I think that's a really important message that she is bringing. I really, if people want to know more and not ready for reading the book, you can listen to the conversation I had with her, because she goes into detail a little bit about the book. Of course, the goal for these conversations is not so much talking about the book, but well, Dominika talked a lot about where that ideas came from and where she learned it, and so there is a lot of interesting conversations there as well for people. Okay, I want to move to, in most cases, one of the most interesting questions is that, because you answered already so many interesting things, what's a question that I didn't ask that you really think I should also ask you?
Oh, that is a good question. Let me see. You did not ask me about my online community, which is called Her Incisive Thoughts. And one thing that you can add, one thing you could ask me about that is, what is it like having built this community?
Wow.
And
Now I'm really interested indeed, because it's not everybody. Well, a lot of people join communities. Some people are just listening in and not very active, but you created, and yeah, I would almost say two communities, because you really are part of the Agile in Color community as well. So this is a community that I think you can completely created from scratch. So how was that for you to do that indeed?
this also similar to my work onto the doctorate application. It literally happened in 1 or 2 days, right? I can't even remember what it was that made me want to build this community, but I will say that in all of this work that I do, I'm creating these things for myself, if you will, because I feel like I need it and it doesn't exist. And
So
so,
wait, before you go into that, what I'm hearing is you have a need, you create something for yourself because you need it, and then it's like, oh, I've now created
share
it for
it.
myself. I can just as well share it to my friends, because if I need it, probably someone else needs it too. Is that how
Exactly.
this starts?
That's
Wow.
exactly how it started. And
And big surprise, many people then jump into that.
a lot of people that jumped into it were really friends of mine. And I would really love to grow it with others joining, like people who don't know me or who just saw it online. But I will also say that I haven't been as actively promoting it, as we talked about. I could do a better job at promoting it and saying it's there and constantly sharing updates. I hope that with
Is that
my,
linked to what you said earlier about not being bragging and things like that? Is
yes,
that related to that? Okay.
100% linked. But I have to get better. So I'm hoping that I could tie some of these things together, meaning um, some of the talks that we're doing. I'm going to be doing a talk at Agile 2023 under the Agile Essentials track. I'm going to be talking about facilitation, great facilitation for meetings. And with my doctoral research that I'm planning to do, I'm going to connect it by sharing some of the things that I find and some of the things that I create on that platform to try to keep the conversation going, but also help me not to have to focus on too many things. I want everything to be related so that I could work on everything together.
Wow. Well, and at the same time, I don't want to, I'm not here to give advice, but I would also say
I would
you
love
don't
any
need to do,
advice.
well, you don't need to do everything yourself. The reason why I'm saying that is that I've noticed that, for example, I've written a couple of books, or I collected some information and put it in a lot of books, and then I helped my daughter publish a book. And if I compare how much time I spent talking about my daughter's book compared to my own books, it's just tremendously bigger. It's so much easier to talk about someone else's work and say, whoa, look a little bit, this is really nice. And I've noticed that for a lot of people. And so sometimes it's easy to just people, if you bring in people on board, that they will make the publicity because they are so much happy about what happened. And for us, it's like, or at least that's how it feels to me. Will I say again something about it? I've said it already last week or last month, and will people not feel like I'm talking too much about it? And it's like, no, because if that would have been my daughter's thing, I would drop it at any possible occasion, even if it's linked almost from a very big part of it. And
Yeah.
so it's so much easier to have others on doing that. And I see you nodding a lot, so I think you recognize a lot of what I'm
It's
saying.
true. I definitely agree with that. I don't want to bombard with self promotional stuff. Like I feel like that's self serving. But then also I don't want to say, hey, can you post about this? Like I want, if you want to post about it, great, but I don't want to be the driver behind someone else posting either. So I guess it's just something to think about, like what's a better way to get the content out there. And maybe it is just inviting more conversations, I guess.
Yeah, but if it's a community, you can also ask that question. Wait, okay, I thought I needed to sneeze, but then I'm not. Okay, I've created some kind of things in a similar way that you did, in the sense that I once created a Google Calendar for agile conferences, and I created it for the exact same reason as you did. Oh, I want to go to conferences, so I'll just create a calendar, and I do it a separate one so that the people in my family don't always see it, but I can see it. Where do I want to go? And so in the first month, I don't know, I added 30 conferences for the next year, a lot of time spent into that. And then I realized, wait a minute, it's not just me. I have lots of friends who are interested in that information as well. So I just shared it with a bunch of friends. And over the years, now we have more than 300 people that have access to that calendar. And basically today, the only thing I do, or at least at some point, the only thing I did was add people to the calendar, and they would add things to that. And very quickly, I realized I should stop adding things to the calendar. When somebody asked me, can you add it to it? I said, no, I will give you access and you can add it. And that way I was removing myself from the active part, but actually engaging them. And at some point, I realized, well, wait a minute, adding people to it, it becomes a burden as well, because now I get a lot of questions. And so there was a small little mailing list linked to that. And I said, okay, how do people think I should solve it? And just out of the blue, three people said, well, we need to figure out a different way, but we can add people to it as well. So now it's mostly one person, but there was at least multiple people who said they wanted to add as well. And so gradually, I'm not doing anything more. The most thing I do is that when people by mistake add their dentist's appointment to that calendar, I send them a little mail. Oh, that's an interesting agile conference. Can I join? And they were like feeling embarrassed, but at least that's the kind of interaction I do. And most of other things is taking care of the community. People make publicity for it. The Agile Alliance has proposed to have a page around it and things like that. So people are really helping out. But it took, and now it's easy for me because I did that originally in 2007. We're 15 years later.
Yes.
It took me a long time to realize, hey, I don't need to do all of that. And
Yes.
like a lot of the things that you said, is a small little steps, and very quickly other people are jumping in. But I felt like I was in control and I needed to do these things, and I felt bad about it because that's not how the agile community is working. And I really needed to, and gradually, and I tried it right from the beginning to open it up with everybody, but I realized very well, not recently, I realized some 10 years ago, like, wait a minute, I can actually push it even more to other people and not be the person. And for me, yes, I started that calendar, and some people say, yeah, Eve, that has this, and it's like, no, it's not my calendar. It's a community thing that is, that many people are working on. I just happened to be the person that first thought about it, and then used Google Calendars to work on that. But for me, it now feels like there's more than maybe even 400 people right now who are creating that and who are doing something with it. So that's and that feels a lot like what you're doing is like in the beginning of that part. Like you created it, you have people around you helping out, but it feels, and maybe I'm pushing it, but it feels to me that you're still figuring out how could I have more people helping in other parts of just that community.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part to do. And now I hope to inspire you, but at the same time
You
I
have
know it's
inspired
hard.
me. Yeah. Yes, yes,
It's
indeed.
it is hard to go to that next step on multiple levels. Well, first of all, you're also asking more commitment from other people.
Yeah.
But if that community is large enough, there is typically a few people who want to help out or who want to help out finding other people. And for me, and that's the advantage that you have, like the Agile in Color is below the flag of the Agile Alliance and things like that. So there is a lot of people there that really believe in community and want to help out initiatives all around the world. So that's there is definitely energy, I would say, in our agile community for these kind of things. You just
Yes.
need to find the people who have energy for that and want to help out with that. So that's but thanks for sharing, because it what I like. So these initiatives, they're well that are under the flag of the Agile Alliance. There's multiple things next to each other, and sometimes it's not always clear what's the difference. But it's really, for me, it is a difference, and it shows where people have different kind of energy for. Yeah. Agile in Color and Women in Agile, I confused them earlier on in our conversation, not because they're similar, but the ideas are similar behind. We want to promote people that typically don't get enough promotion. Yeah? And,
Yes.
and, and, and that's the kind of thing, not because men are bad or white. No, it's like we want to see the people who are typically not here as much. Let's give them a voice, and let's bring them more into the attention. And Agile Alliance, for me, this is what I like so much, that they try to say, okay, if you have an idea to support people one way or another, we will help you in that kind of ways. And that's
Yep.
really nice about it. Okay, we almost came to the end. So what I would like to know now from you is, who do you think I should also invite? Who do you think? And I know we talked a little bit up front, so I know that you have a small list of people that you want to talk about.
Yes. So first is Dina M. Davis.
And I think that's Dina, right?
Yeah, that's Dina. She recently founded a company called Agile Nibbles LLC, and her tagline is something like, "How do you eat an elephant one nibble at a time?" And she used to work with me on the core team of Agile in Color, and now she has this company, and she really helps people towards transcendent leadership and personal growth. And literally, I attended one of her. She has lunch and learns, like lunchtime meetups, and I attended one of the meetups, and it really talked about how we talk ourselves out of achieving goals. Like we make excuses, and we just have to do it, to take that first step. And that one meetup really took me toward taking that first step of applying for my doctorate degree. And she is, you definitely will want to talk to her. The second person who I
Wait,
named.
I want to go a little bit because you talked about lunch and learns.
Yes.
Well, the joke, of course, is you talked also about eating elephants. I assume that she's not serving elephants right there. But could you say a little more about these lunch and learns? Because I think it sounds like an interesting idea that not many people do. So could you say some
Yes.
more about that?
Sure. So it's a lunchtime meetup, and she gives a presentation on a specific topic. Um, the one that I went to, I don't remember the name of it, but they're all surrounding Maxwell's laws of growth, I think is what it's called. And it really helps you to take leaps and bounds toward your personal growth. And the talks are only about 45 minutes. It's during the lunch hour, so you're not taking time off your work, and you come, you bring your food, you eat, and you
It's
listen.
physical. That's what I understand. That it's
Oh, it's
physical.
virtual. It's virtual.
It's virtual.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So it's virtual.
it's virtual. Yeah.
So when you say you bring your lunch, so you just sit at your desk in a way and with your
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Because that's why I'm asking, because if you would go have somewhere else, it's very easy that it can take 5 to 10 minutes to get there somewhere.
Yeah.
So 45 minutes plus 2 times 10 minutes, and most people have a shorter lunch time. I would not mind, because I like to have a longer lunch if that could mean, okay, in the evening I could just work half an hour longer, and I still would be earlier at home than if I would have an evening event. So that's why I like the lunch and learns. When I was younger, I was more into, okay, I want evening events because then I have all the time. But then, it also means I'm not at home when I want to support my family and be there. So the idea of lunch and learn, I really like that. So thank you for going a little bit more.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and in person, I think they would be really good too. But in a virtual environment, you can reach a much wider audience. So I would always go for the virtual to be able to get the wider audience.
I really like that. I don't know if I would be able, because your lunchtime is different than my lunchtime, but definitely this is something I would try to join into that. So thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
let's talk about the next person you want to invite.
The next person I want to invite is Christopher C.P. Richardson, one of the founders of Agile in Color. I learned about CP and Agile in Color at the same time. He was doing a presentation about Agile in Color at Adam Weisbart's conference, the Agile Virtual Summit. And that was during a time where it was in 2020, and I really felt like I was disconnected from the Agile community, and learning about Agile.
Why was that? Because that's the moment, that's probably during COVID, that everybody was sitting at home. Is that related to that? Okay.
Yes. And so
I think all of us, we felt really disconnected.
Seeing CP and hearing about what Agile in Color does and how their mission kind of aligned with my own personal mission pushed me to want to meet him. He has a lot of experience in the Agile community. He's a mentor. He's a leader, and he's just great. I think, I know you're going to reach out to him, but I'm also going to reach out to him and say, hey, Eve is going to contact you.
Well, he was already invited by Tricia Broderick, and and to my surprise, I don't know why we didn't record anything yet. I know he's on my invitation list, but for the people who are here regularly, I'm just looking at the numbers right now. I have 387 people that are on that list.
Wow.
So that's a large list. And by publishing once every week, that will take me already 6 years. I know, or I assume I'm not going to do this for 6 years. So it really is on invitation based, because not everybody on that list has been invited. But if everybody like you invites 2 or 3 people, of course, that list grows very fast. But that's okay. For me, the goal is really to learn about different people. And then it's up to the people when they're invited to say, okay, I'm interested in joining. And then I follow the flow of the people accepting it. But in this case, I think the problem is on my side, because I don't have a date on when I invited him. So I probably,
Okay.
for whatever reason, dropped out of people to invite. I don't know why, but I think by tonight I'm going to to reach out to him and sell him as well. So thank you for sharing and also explaining why it's important to have him
Hmm.
here. And if I'm not mistaken, you even had a third person that you wanted to invite. Am I correct?
Yes, Kimmy Raji, who I don't know if she is still, but she used to be on the board of the Agile Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I met her at Agile 2022 last year, and she's just an inspirational woman to me. She
And I
is,
had trouble finding her, but here is her picture. I prepared it, but it didn't. And indeed, I think she still is on the board. I had a
yes.
conversation with her just I don't know, a couple of weeks or months ago about something else. So yeah, she's definitely is on my list. She's indeed a wonderful woman to have talked to and to yeah, because indeed what she's done on that board is wonderful. What she's working on. I think she's surprised many people is maybe sounds negative, because it's just wonderful what she's done there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that's the example. And yeah, for me, the Agile Alliance has done a lot of work on becoming much more diverse,
Yes.
and I think Kemi has a big part in doing that and making sure that there's a lot of work and has the results in there. So it's
Yeah.
and as a result, it's not just diversifying the people, but diversifying where they put their money and how they spread the knowledge, and making sure that more people around the world learn about it. We have big supporters for many different kind of conferences around the world, and that's a lot
Yeah.
of the nice things that are happening. So thanks for thinking about her as well, because I think it's indeed a woman that deserves to be known more, and not just that, she has a wonderful story, or at least uh, every time I talk to her, I'm like, oh, this is just wonderful conversations. So thanks
Mhm.
for bringing up. Okay, I want to end up our conversation. We talked about almost an hour and a half. If that, time just flew by. It was for me like it feels like really going fast. If people want to reach out to you, what would be a good way to reach out to you?
Um, LinkedIn is probably the best way.
And I think, am I correct that this
That
is
is right.
your
That is my LinkedIn. And I'm also available at email, Kadidra.mcleod at gmail.com. So you may have noticed that my last name is now Hurst. I got
Mhm.
married 2 years ago in 2021, October 10th. But, email address, I had that email address forever. So it's still Kadidra.mcleod, which is my maiden name, at Gmail.
Well, I had a conversation. I'm forgot with who, but I just published it a couple of weeks ago with another woman that changed her name, and we had an interesting conversation at the beginning as well. Because indeed, um, for me, it's a habit that in Belgium, for example, not many women change their names. And I never, well, actually, I've learned not that long, well, still a couple of years ago, but I learned that my mother never changed her name when she married my father. But at that time, it was rather unique. So we're talking about the 70s. And at that time, she did it. And so for me, I always know that, a woman has a separate name as a man. In Belgium, and I know now that not many people do it, or not many women do it in Belgium. But still, it's a habit that's happening a lot around the world, and it's just, for me, one of the different ways how we can see diversity also in cultures. But I do remember talking with my mother about it, saying, "Yeah, but if I would have done it, it would have changed everything on paperwork and in the school that she was teaching, and lots and lots of different changes." And she said, "Yeah, it was partly a practical thing, partially also an emotional thing. Like, I want to keep my name." But there was also a lot of practical, and what you just described. Okay, you have an email address, and now I need to change my email address. And I saw that happening with another agile coach that I won't mention the name here, but she did something similar. And she was like, "Yeah, but I want to do this because I'm really proud of the name of my husband." But then 5 years later, she had to go back to that old email address because she was getting a divorce. And by that time, that email address was used by someone else. And now she was like, "Damn it, I had an email address. I went to that one from with my partner's name, and now I have to go back and I can't even have it anymore." It's like, damn it, I should have kept it at least as a backup or something like that. And it's like, yeah, it's all that kind of extra paperwork. And it's not that I say it's wrong to change a name. I mean, people do what they want, and I understand also the, how do I say it, the being proud and saying, okay, and maybe I like that name more and whatever. There's all kinds of reasons, because you also want to show the world, like, I have a partnership and I trust that partnership, and I'm proud of that partnership. But it has also a lot of practical implications, like changing an email address and things like that.
Yes.
I can
my email
imagine
address is still the same, and luckily I didn't have a personal brand under Kadidra McLeod, if you will. So my personal brand is Kadidra Hurst. So I think I'm okay. Like, if I had a personal brand as myself with my maiden name, then I definitely wouldn't have changed it. But
yeah, and your LinkedIn, for the people that noticed it, it's that brand was just, or that LinkedIn link was just, how would I say it? That link was just your name.
Just my first name.
Yeah, indeed. So that makes a difference as well.
Yeah.
Okay. I seem to have a trouble with the screen. Let me give you, let's do one little thing on my computer. Yeah, now I have you back. Sorry, it's interesting to have that just at the end, but my screen just went black. So I was talking for 10 seconds completely to a black screen, which kind of felt strange at the end of our conversation. Probably my computer's telling me the conversation should be over. I don't know. I don't know why, because I felt it really interesting conversation. I really want to thank you for the conversation. It's been a wonderful time. For the people, they probably don't know, but at the beginning there were some technical issues on my side on the scheduling, but we ended up doing, and this was one of the first times that I felt more nervous starting in than the people joining in, for practical reasons. And I think we both happened to enjoy it a lot, and call, at least I feel a lot more calmer now than I was at the beginning. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. For me, it was a wonderful time. So I want to thank you. And I will definitely invite your 3 guests, and I will let you know at the moment that I'm posting them. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Eve. I appreciate it. It was nice meeting you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.